Merry Christmas, poopsies, and Happy New Year. I hope you've all had a wonderful holidays or are having, depending on when this video gets uploaded. So, thank you for joining me for today. I will be discussing climate change, and I feel like it's a very important topic. I wanted to contribute this year, especially after everything that the planet and its inhabitants are going through right now. Before I begin, I just want to let you know I just posted a vlog video of me doing this makeup look. If you want to go check it out, I normally don't wear makeup anymore for videos, but I just felt like doing it today because I had more free time. So here's one of our Christmas trees in the back, the string lights leading up to the curtains, and I just wanted to make a sassy time kind of Coca-Cola drinking session, so forgive me for the plastic bottle. But that's the only thing. Coke comes in the glass ones too, but I just couldn't get a hand on those right now. But I'm drinking out of this instead of a red Solo cup. My Visco Girl with a reusable straw, and the ice is already in there, so I will get started now. It's really windy outside. Oh my gosh. Well, that was instant karma for using a plastic bottle. I just spilled it everywhere. I will be back and clean this up. Okay, so I had to go over there in the countertop, and I had yet another failed attempt at pouring. The fizz came up too fast. So guess I'll have to be doing these Coke Pepsi sessions in these kind of reusable containers from now on if I want to practice what I preach. This is a big area of the home, so if kind of hears like it's echoey, that's probably why. But it's nice for a change. I'm alone finally all day where I could have time to kind of film around the house. It's been a minute since that, but let's talk. So I'm just gonna kind of be like your little news reporter here, and because I've been researching this subject for a very long time. In fact, before it kind of even became this whole thing, I've been paying close attention to what's been going on, because the changes have been very obvious since around 2016. I started noticing warmer weather creep up on us, and like the whole red tide in Florida that gets affected. And so it kind of concerned me because 2016 was one of the hottest years, but like 2019 matched close to it. But it's only gonna seemingly get worse. I can't even say seemingly at this point because it is almost pretty much a fact blatantly, unless you're just actively choosing to ignore it. I mean, the signs are very, very solid and clear that we're a huge contributor and a cause. And it's just is what it is, you know. You can still have your own thought process behind it and believe otherwise. But it is what it is, okay? So I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna argue. You can choose to believe what you believe. That's not my place to tell you not to. That's not my place to convince you of otherwise, you know? I've spoken with all kinds of people who don't believe what I believe, and who do believe what I believe, and some who don't know, or some who are kind of in between. So it's very interesting to get everyone's opinion. Although I respect everyone's opinion, I do have my own to share. So I feel like as an influencer in some way, it is my responsibility almost too. But for the most part, it seems like at least half of people are in alignment with my belief as well. Or I can't even say that, but because the people I've spoken to, it's not even half, but seemingly in the online world at least, it seems like most people acknowledge this is happening. They hear about it every day. They see what's going on. It's affecting their lives. So I'm kind of just going to be talking in this video about what's been going on in different parts of the world, okay, and how it all connects and links together to kind of educate on the whole process. And I picked up my information bits from everywhere. I'm no meteorologist, but I acknowledge that this is occurring to some degree. Am I saying things are going to end up too little, too late? No. But do I think it's too late? Yes. Do I know that for sure? No. I don't know if anyone does. But I feel it, I see it, especially living in a warmer climate environment. I am impacted by the changes. My whole backyard is almost like 3/4 burnt, dry, dead grass, even after all that rain and sprinklers watering them. It may just have been bad grass that was put here when I first bought the house, but I'm already seeing the changes in the foliage. The green is greener. The trees and the plant life are growing bigger and better. That's what carbon does. That's what warmer weather does to plant life. However, the more foliage, the more risk of a fire, okay? And that's kind of what's been cyclically occurring globally. With warmer weather, we need more air conditioning. This has been a record year for air conditioning. I would say 2016 for sure. My air was like always on, but, and that was in a tiny apartment. But for a house, like 80-85% of the time the air is on. So it's like always, even at night, it like blows a lot. And some days I remember clearly the feels like temp was 90 degrees overnight, like in the middle of the night. Like, is that normal? I don't remember that being normal. In the first place, I'm going to talk about, and again, you can agree and disagree. I've spoken with someone who's lived in Florida for like 3 decades, and they've told me Florida's always been like this. I agree. Here's why. Because places like Florida, the Caribbean, the Sahara, I'm sure they're closer to the equator, so I'm sure they constantly get similar climate. So they're going to be most impacted, but also not as impacted at the same time. Here's why. So the closer you are to the equator, the less volatile weather you get. So if you're in more of the further northern hemisphere or the further southern hemisphere, like Canada or Australia, you're more impacted by things like wildfires, things like climate change, because you go through the multiple seasons, whereas Florida doesn't really feel like it. Like, it's, I'm not even kidding, 2 days from Christmas and it's still warm outside. Normally that's Florida, okay, it's gonna still be warm outside, but like day-to-day basis, I don't remember it being this warm, this often, this frequent. And it's so drastic and extreme. Like last night, actually the whole yesterday was just pouring rain everywhere. Like no matter, like literally it couldn't stop raining no matter where you went. And like there was so much water accumulating that like it's still flooded right now as we speak in the afternoon, like the front by the And that was like several hours ago. Like the water has nowhere to go. And there is tons and tons of times where that occurred over the summers especially, but it'll happen drastically. Like it'll be 110 outside, feels like, and then all of a sudden it will just go 70 degrees, feels like, and pour rain, and it won't stop. And then when it's done, it stops like instantly, and it's 110 again, and all of that water will just come up, humidify, and it's like hell on earth. I'm telling you, like, this summer was brutal, and I've never seen climate behave in that way. I'm not even exaggerating. Like, Florida or not, I've never seen such a brutal, harsh summer, and an unpredictable one too. It actually killed our whole garden that we were growing, minus one plant that is actually pretty strong in multiple types of climate, but all of our, like, even the grass just like died off this year. And like, you couldn't even grill outside. Like, Floridians are normally tough, and you couldn't even do that. And like, the humidity got so bad. Like, the other day it was 100% humidity, 100%. Most days were 90 and up. It was like 98, 96, like brutal. I go outside at 7 in the morning. I already see the moisture on the windows, like literally all the condensation dripping, and I can't even breathe. It feels like I'm on Venus. Like, literally, I can't breathe. I would be able to breathe more if I were to smoke. I mean, I'm not kidding. I go outside and it's so like congested, so humid that it congests you, and it comes up your throat, and I just can't breathe. So some days I don't even go outside because I can't even breathe. Is that normal? I don't know, but that's how my world has been affected. That's the climate here, and I live in a very, very kind of subtropical zone of Florida. I mean, like, it is as close as it gets. So, and I also am like out, like, in the coastal water region where it really gets like, you know, brutal sometimes with the dampness and all that, the extreme heat. So, like, where I lived in Florida before was always 10 degrees cooler than now. And I'm talking like, not the feels like temp, but the temperature. So the feels like is up to 20, 25 degrees difference from where I used to live. It used to be more like cooler and kind of still near coastal, but it was not as brutal as here because it's more jutted out in the water. So it kind of just accumulates and builds up, and the clouds are very different here. I've never seen them like this, especially this year. I mean, usually Florida has those kind of clouds that are like thick and yellow and smog looking, but these were like huge, heavy clouds. Like Venus looking, I'm not even kidding. Even the sunset, the sunrise and the sunset look pink, and they warn you, like, when the pink sky happens every day, that something's going on with the climate. And it's true, like, the colors of the sky will change. They're more orangey and reddy, and it's very unusual, especially during certain times, like after heavy thunderstorms, you'll get that color, and it's like, this doesn't look like Earth. It's just a weird, eerie feeling, and I'm getting it. I think a lot of people kind of intuitively feel the difference too. Like, they go outside 30 seconds and they already have to pat their armpits and everything. I mean, it's just brutal. You can't enjoy exercise outside. You can't enjoy the weather. You can't enjoy going anywhere. You can't enjoy, like, there's tons of places like shopping centers where you can go, like, walk outside and kind of shop around plazas and stuff. Like, you can't even do that without just like, oh my God, it's so hot. And I'm really concerned genuinely about this coming summer because we don't know how hot it can get. So I'm going to talk about Australia first because they've been recently affected by these things. And I'm sorry if this is a triggering subject for some of you, and for some of you it's like, oh my God, I can't believe So I'm just talking about how it's affected my world. I'm not saying the whole world is like going like this, no. But I'm saying already, even in an equatorial kind of zone, subtropical, I'm closer to the equator than most people, but still nowhere near like the true equator. That's another 1,000 miles below me. I don't know. I 500 miles. I don't know. But no. Yeah, it's more like 1,000 at least. Maybe 1,500. Anyway, my point is, this is as close as it gets without stepping into the Caribbean and Belize, like South America. That's the true equator. So I'm already feeling the drastic changes. Hearing on the news just about like how much even my whole hometown Chicago has changed, like from summer to winter. And I've been there several times since moving here, and I'm noticing it sometimes gets even hotter there than it is here in Florida. You don't feel it as, it's not maybe as intense for you because it's less humid there, it's more dry, but the heat, actually, no, that's not true. I'm sorry, I scratched that. You feel the heat more in the dry, so it's like you feel it more there, but the feels like is more here because of the humidity. Does that make sense? So let's say the temp is 90 in Chicago and 90 in Florida. The feels like in Chicago would be closer to 95, 100, but the feels like here would be like 118, 120, 115, 110, whatever. So the feels like is more because of the humidity here, but it actually feels hotter in the dry because it's so dry. It's like a desert. Does that make sense? But you feel it less here because it's moisture, but the moisture makes it more, feels like heat. I don't know how they measure that, but that's my experience anyway. At least that's how my body personally, how I am affected by the difference. Okay, so however, Florida doesn't have the extremes here. Like, I don't even think we're going to have a winter this year, honestly. And people mistake global warming and climate change for warmer, hotter, year-round. No, it means colder winters, warmer summers. But for people who are closer to the equatorial zone, you are most likely going to have warmer year round. It doesn't mean that you're going to have those same drastic extremes as the more northern or more southern hemispheres like Canada, Alaska, or Australia. Like Alaska even had 90 degrees this summer, a record. All the ice is melting. I'm going to get into it, but Australia, they have all these bushfires right now. And they've just broken 2 records in a matter of like 2-3 days. Like, by 1 to 3 degrees Celsius, like exceeding each other. So like one day was beating the record by 1 Celsius, and then like 2 days later they beat the record by another 2 degrees Celsius. So it's exponentially going to get worse. All that heat and all that burning has to go somewhere, and it's contributing even further to the climate of the earth. And the earth is a system. It'll continue to living on its own, to be living and thriving on its own. It always has been for billions of years. But that's the people who say that forget that we can't. The people who say that forget we cannot live on Venus. Okay, the earth can live as itself, as a volcanic Venusian atmosphere, but we cannot breathe and live in that, and there's going to be pretty soon uninhabitable zones, and hundreds of millions of people have to be displaced and migrate to places like closer to the coast where it's cooler, more bearable. We may even have to have like floating cities pretty soon because the sky, last time I checked, is cooler. If you've ever flown internationally on an airplane, you notice the temperature up there is way colder than on the ground. So just like they plan to have floating cities on Venus, where 30 miles above Venus it's actually livable and you can actually breathe the oxygen, it will be similar. You may still need to wear spacesuits and all, but I'm just saying you may not be able to live above the earth because you can actually like literally freeze like one of my old professors actually said that they went paragliding, and then like a cloud sucked this lady up, and like she passed out because of the oxygen. There was a lack of. That's why in a plane you need cabin pressure. And she froze. Like her whole body froze. And she got thrown back down. Like the cloud actually sucked. So like that's how the jet streams work on Earth. If you go too high, you may actually end up going way too high and freezing, and then like getting thrown back down like a tornado. And I don't know if she survived, but she was so unconscious and frozen that it's like she doesn't even remember the occurrence, or she wouldn't have if she did survive, because it was just like cryogenic freeze. I mean, you go unconscious, lack of oxygen, and you're frozen, so you're like preserved. I think she survived, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's kind of crazy what's up there and the difference. But yeah, people are worried that this is going to end up an 800-degree plus planet because of all the carbon, and it's a vicious cycle. It gets trapped in this thick atmosphere, and it's just a cycle, and it just gets worse. So the more heat, the more ice melts, the more ice melts, the more water in the ocean to contribute to more heat. It absorbs like 95% of the heat, but it can only absorb so much. So when you warm all that water, it's contributing to warmer raindrops and all of that. So it's like, imagine opening your freezer and just leaving it there. And on top of that, you're throwing like a heater over it. Like, of course, it's going to melt all the ice, and it's going to exponentially get warmer even faster the longer you do it. Because now that ice that's half melted is warmer than it has been when it was first initially frozen, and all that permafrost in Siberia, and it's melting and contributing even more, exposing old dead mammals from like the old last ice age. The Arctic is nowhere near the same level of ice as it once was in like the 70s or something. Antarctica's melting, Greenland is melting at a crazy rate. Hundreds of billions of tons of ice every year, which is an unimaginable number to put into perspective. I think someone said it was like pushing 2,000 elephants of ice every second into the ocean, especially during the summertime for the northern hemisphere. But now it's winter here in the northern and summer in the southern, so that's why Australia is going through this heat. And it's a constant cycle, you know. And Australia is usually hot, but like people forget the numbers and the exponential growth over time. It's never gotten this bad, this fast, this worse, this fast. And people are like, oh, it was 40 degrees Celsius before. People forget, like that one time in the 70s. There's a one time for everything, but it's been happening more and more frequently and more occurrence lately. And I feel comfortable talking about these things on here, on this channel, because like most of my viewers kind of seem to have a sense of agreement with me. A lot of young audience, young open-minded audience here who understand, even an older audience who understands. I've never had like too controversial critical comments about every time I bring up this topic, but I feel like because I'm so passionate about it, and that I'm, as an influencer, affecting people in some way, that I feel responsible almost and pushed to change and do things. Like I'm even considering more plant-based diet next year. I'm even considering I don't want to force anyone, but maybe hinting my family to kind of buy us more plant-based stuff, because it's like the meat's gonna run out if this keeps going, you know. You can't contribute to more of the carbon by having these meat farms. It's just sad and tragic what they do with these animals. There's no compassion there whatsoever. I'm beginning to feel more guilt every time I eat meat, and it's like I don't want to add that to my body, because like the guilt, when you trigger an emotion into something you're consuming, it can make you actually sick, just even the mental thought process of it behind it. And it's like a mandala effect of global guilt, and like now like everyone is starting to believe that, and then it's kind of like putting it on you, so it's like you almost have no choice but to change and evolve. So I don't know, I'm just like I never used to ever think about like even feeling guilty for not using a reusable like this, and now I do. Like I try to always, like my water I've been drinking for the last, ever since I moved to Florida, like the last 3-4 years I've been drinking out of glasses and using a Brita filter. Like I refuse to even use water bottles unless I really need to, like unless I'm like, it's not even an excuse anymore for me not to, I mean, to use them at all. Like, I should just put the Brita water in here and go and put some ice in it, you know, like instead of just like, oh, it's more convenient to throw it in the fridge, and because I like drinking cold, you know, I can't stand like warm water, lukewarm water. But I should start doing that from now on, like, you know, yeah. And the Pacific Garbage Patch, I'm skeptical about that because there's no picture of it. Like, there's no picture of the patch. If it's this whole continent, why is there no picture of it? I'm sure it's hard to fly out there and take a picture, you know? But it's like, where's the evidence? You know, I'm sure someone in a boat somewhere has to have sailed all the way out there, those huge mega ships and cargo. You know, how do they get it there to begin with? How do they dump it there? You know, I'm sure it's an accumulation of Asia throwing their trash in the oceans, and it just all builds up and it creates this like spiral in the Pacific. And it may be not even its own continent itself. It may just be like a ton of trash sitting out somewhere, and they estimate that it's the size of like two Texases. But anyway, it may be too thin to truly see, like compared to the whole Pacific, because it's huge. Like, it may just be dispersed in many areas in the Pacific. We don't really know because there's no evidence. Like, do we really know that's sitting out there? That's the only thing I disagree with. But I do understand how it can kill off and affect sea life, wildlife, and there's billions of birds dying and nowhere near the same amount of wildlife as it once was. And this is according to what scientists say. Again, we don't really know this to be true, but this is just what they say and predict. It's not like they actually can go outside and measure exact number of wildlife, but they know because by an estimate of size of how many, let's say there's 50 birds per square mile, now there's 30, let's say. So that's how they estimate these numbers based off. But maybe those birds migrated somewhere else, you know? Like, we don't really know the true number. They can just estimate and say 1 billion, maybe it's 800 million, you know? We don't really know. But over time we know, based on their models and based on, like, obviously there's multiple scientists in multiple areas, so they're observing multiple different places, so they are accurate. I'm not saying they're not or trying to discredit them in any way, but that's my skepticism as a part of it, because I'm, I guess, still kind of like surprised and have a little climate anxiety because I cannot believe the numbers that I'm reading and seeing every single day. It just gets worse and worse and worse, and it's like compounding. And they're talking about it more and more, and like you can't help but hear about it everywhere you go. Like, not even the news, just everywhere. Like, people are talking about it more. People are just contributing more to the conversation. It's a beautiful thing, but at the same time it's scary because we don't really know what to do, what to expect anymore, how we're going to be able to live or breathe in 10 years. I mean, places like New Delhi and Sarajevo, like Beijing, they're having, Sydney, they're having a hard time breathing, and they're having more and more lung problems. Doctors are getting concerned. Doctors are coming on to the newsstands now and discussing this issue more and more now because they're seeing more people, more patients with lung problems that's contributed to heart problems because it's all linked with your circulatory system. And it's like smoking 40 cigarettes a day. I mean, it's crazy. Hazardous extreme air pollution quality levels. All of that carbon and all that smog from fires just sitting there, and the heat contributing on top of it, and you can't even go outside, you can't even exercise. People with heart conditions, lung conditions, asthma, allergies, young people, old people, they cannot go outside at all. It's like, obviously, when it gets to that point and you can't live your normal day-to-day life, even go to work without wearing a mask over your face, what kind of life is that? So I consider that uninhabitable. Like, people don't even realize that places where they're having readings of 6,000 where it's the highest number the scale goes is like 500. It's like 20 times worse. Is that normal for you to be breathing and ingesting that every day? So that's the part where I'm getting a little bit concerned, to be honest with you guys. I don't really know where this is going. Does anyone really know as well? Testing. And I hope I'm not contributing to your climate anxiety. Again, I just want to address the situation at hand and kind of get you guys interested more into it and do something together, because we can only protest so much, but the big head board people are not going to listen unless it starts affecting their pocket. And trust me, people only care when it starts affecting their pockets, when all of a sudden they don't see as much flow. So yeah, maybe the answer is stop eating meat. Maybe the answer is stop buying water bottles. Maybe the answer is stop supporting companies that support these things as well. That can affect things long term as well in the economy and the market. I mean, I'm kind of tired of hearing people say, oh my gosh, this is going to affect the economy. This is going to affect the market. I understand, but it's kind of selfish. Like, you're worried about how it's going to affect the economy. How about worrying about how it's going to affect how you breathe? Okay, I understand the logic behind that. People don't want to lose all their years of hard work. Okay, but sometimes you have no choice, especially when your planet is probably going to become Venusian. Maybe consider that. Yeah, it's getting kind of tiring hearing about kind of grady sort of stuff like that. And my point is, another thing, Indonesia's had fires. Oh my gosh, where else? Alaska's had wildfires, Siberia's had wildfires. 150,000 hectares burned there. Australia in the last 3 months has had over 7 million hectares lost. And firefighters are really brave to kind of get out there and, volunteer. But, only so many people can get hurt doing that. California has had a rough year. Climate change also contributes to more volcanic activity and earthquakes in some way. I don't really remember or know how, but something to do with the warming, I assume, and the expansion of the earth. I can only imagine. But yeah, I've never seen such extremes, like extreme blizzards, extreme colds, and then extreme warms. And people are saying, well, it's just winter, duh. Within the last few years, ever since but right before I left Illinois, I've never seen it go from like 20 degrees to minus 50 like that overnight. It's like, how does that even happen? That's not supposed to happen. That's not supposed to happen. And I know Australia had some rare occurrence with the dipole in the Indian Ocean and all that, but that's going to occur way more now. Heat waves, the heat wave, 115 degrees Fahrenheit in Europe, killed off so many trees in France. I think like 80% of them. And like, they've never had that. France is not supposed to even be that warm. Venice flooding, very tragic, very sad. In Italy, and they go through that too, but they're going through it more and more and more, and even worse. Canada had their horrible set of wildfires this year too. I even forgot where else. The Amazon. Oh my gosh. I mean, it does every year, like I said, but like it's just getting more progressively worse for farming and all that. Again, I call it the greed culture. I mean, more. When is it going to be enough though? Where else? Africa has had horrendous problem with fires this year as well. They don't even talk about that because they always do, but it just gets worse. Where else in the world am I forgetting? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But it was just such a shocking year that you almost like forget like what happened because so much has occurred. But I hope this got the message across to some of you guys. I'm just praying that whatever happened in Australia it doesn't happen in Europe again, because I've noticed, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but year after year, as this thing gets worse, whatever happened in the summer in the southern hemisphere happens in the summer coming thereafter in the northern, and it's just like cycling itself through and just ripping apart and devastating whatever it can. And we, I guess, have to go more solar, even though it's temporarily more expensive. Not everyone can afford or accommodate in poor countries. Not everyone can afford even an air conditioner or like proper water source or supply. It's really the tragedy of having to migrate all these people and then having not enough space for them. Well, Montana has all that space and they're colder, so maybe there seems like a better life over there, more peaceful anyway. Utah. But again, it's expensive. It's like, it's not a matter of that. It's just a matter of like the economy overall. How's that going to affect the economy in general, And I know I'm saying that again, but it's like, I disagree with it, but I agree with it, because at the same time, realistically, like, you can't just do that. Like, the big board head people are not just going to approve of that to occur, They're not just going to let all these people move in because of the climate. Like, honestly, I wonder if they could care less. So I feel like maybe we all just need to get up and say something, and I don't know, in some way. Are we even contributing to it? Is it just the planet cycle? Who knows? Like, we don't really know, It's open for discussion. But, for sure, everyone's life is continuing as normal, but in a few years, in another decade, I guess I'm kind of just trying to open people's mind coming in this next decade. Like, 2010, it didn't seem to be a problem, but now it is in 2020. So it's like, let's see what happens in 2030, Maybe we'll talk again by then, but I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this way more than you can even imagine. Is planting trees the answer? I don't know. Thank you for joining me, guys. And I will see you in the next video. Sorry if this video wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but we're just talking and having sassy time.